The Montana dawn came cold and unforgiving, painting the Bitterroot Valley in shades of silver and gold. Cole Blackwood stood on the wide porch of his timber house, steam rising from the tin cup of coffee in his weathered hands. At 34 years old, he carried the weight of 3 generations on his shoulders, and some mornings like this one in late November of 1887, that weight felt heavy enough to crush stone. 3,000 acres stretched before him, land his grandfather had bled for his father had nearly died defending, and land he was now in danger of losing. The irony was not lost on him. John "Old Jack" Blackwood had survived Comanche raids in the 1850s to claim this valley. He had limped home from the Civil War with a Confederate bullet still lodged near his spine, determined to hold what was his. And now Cole, who had survived his own wars against the Sioux and Cheyenne, found himself defeated not by warriors or weather, but by numbers in a ledger book. $3,500. The figure haunted his sleep. The bank wanted it by December 31st, less than 6 weeks away. He had $450 in cash hidden in a coffee tin in the kitchen. His cattle were worth perhaps $5,000, but winter was the worst time to sell. Buyers were scarce, and the animals were lean from the coming cold. By spring, they would be worth twice as much, but spring might as well be a decade away. Cole took a long drink of the bitter coffee and watched the sun climb higher. Below him in the valley, he could see his herd beginning to stir. 1,247 head of cattle, he knew the exact count. 35 horses in the corral, 12 miles of fence line that needed repair before the first major snow. 2 young sons who barely knew him anymore. One father whose health failed a little more each week. The weight of responsibility settled deeper into his bones. Still blaming yourself for Beth, I see. Cole did not turn at the sound of Old Jack's voice. His father moved with surprising quiet for a man of 68, despite the limp that never quite healed. The old man settled into the rocking chair he had carved 40 years ago, back when his hands were steady and his future seemed bright with promise. Every morning, Cole admitted. There was no point in lying to his father. Jack Blackwood had always been able to read his son like men read the weather, seeing storms coming long before the first clouds appeared. Been 2 years, son. Beth is with the Lord now. She would not want you carrying this guilt like a cross. Cole finally turned to look at his father. Old Jack had grown thin over the past months, his frame shrinking inside clothes that had once fit well. But his eyes remained sharp, the pale blue of a winter sky missing nothing. If I had taken her to Denver like the doctor said, if I had not been so damn proud insisting our children be born on Blackwood land, if I had made the right choice. If is the most useless word in the English language. Jack interrupted, his voice carrying the iron that had sustained him through decades of hardship. There is no if in a man's life, Cole, only what is and what comes next. Now tell me true. What comes next for you? Cole drained the last of his coffee and stared into the empty cup as if answers might be written in the dregs. I don't know, Pa. I am losing everything. The ranch, the money. Ben and Luke barely speak to me. I failed Beth. I am failing you. I am failing the legacy you entrusted to me. Old Jack was quiet for a long moment, the only sound the gentle creak of his rocking chair on the worn planks of the porch. When he spoke again, his voice had softened, though the steel beneath remained. 10 years ago, when I signed this ranch over to you, do you remember what I said? You said it was built with blood and sweat of 3 generations. I also said something else. I said that a Blackwood man does not surrender. Ever. Our family has faced Comanche war parties, Union cavalry droughts that killed half our stock, wind terrors that froze men solid as fence posts. We survived all of it. You think some banker with soft hands and a ledger book is going to break what warriors in war could not? Cole felt something stir in his chest, an ember of the determination that had once driven him. What would you have me do, rob the bank? He attempted a smile, though it felt foreign on his face. Jack did not smile back. If necessary, yes. I have done worse to keep this land. But there are other ways, smarter ways. You need to think like a general, not a defeated soldier. I am not sure I remember how to be a general anymore, Pa. Then I will remind you. First lesson, identify your resources. You have land cattle skills. What else? Cole thought carefully. Tom Fletcher, my foreman. He is loyal. Miguel Santos knows horses better than any man I have met. We have decent ranch hands, though we are short by 15 men. Personnel is good. What else? Think about what this ranch represents. Why would a bank want it foreclosed? The land is valuable, prime grazing, access to water from Bitterroot Creek, and Cole's mind began to work faster pieces of a puzzle sliding into place. The railroad. Northern Pacific is planning expansion through Montana. Land along the proposed route would be worth 10 times its current value. Jack nodded slowly. Now you are thinking. Someone wants this land, and it is not just the bank wanting debt repaid. Someone is maneuvering to take what is ours. Cole felt the old familiar sensation of preparing for battle, that clarity of purpose that had sustained him through his army years. But even knowing that I still need $3,500 by year's end, money is one solution, but it is not the only solution. A wise man once told me that the best defense is not always a frontal assault. Sometimes you win by changing the terms of engagement. Before Cole could respond, the sound of small feet on the stairs inside the house interrupted them. Luke emerged first, his sandy hair sticking up in all directions, his 5-year-old face still soft with sleep. Behind him came Ben, more cautious, his 8-year-old eyes already carrying the wariness of someone who had learned too young that the world could take away everything you loved. "Papa," Luke said, launching himself at Cole with the fearless enthusiasm of childhood. "Is it true we might lose the ranch?" Cole caught his younger son, feeling the small body trembling slightly despite the brave face. Over Luke's head, he met Ben's gaze. The older boy stood apart, arms crossed, a miniature version of Cole himself. "We are facing some challenges," Cole said carefully. He had learned from his own father that you did not lie to children, but you did not burden them with adult fears either. "But Blackwood men do not give up. We will find a way. Like you found a way to save Mama." Ben's voice was quiet but sharp as broken glass. The silence that followed was painful. Old Jack stopped rocking. Luke stiffened in Cole's arms, and Cole felt the familiar guilt wash over him again, cold as the creek water in winter. "Ben," he began, "you could not save her. You could not save my baby sisters. What makes you think you can save the ranch?" The boy's words hit harder than any physical blow. Before Cole could respond, Ben turned and ran back into the house. Cole heard his bedroom door slam, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Luke squirmed free from his father's embrace. "Ben is just scared," he said, with the innocent wisdom of the very young. "He does not want to lose you too, Papa." "I know, son. Are you going to fix it? Make it so we do not have to leave." Cole knelt down so he was eye level with his younger son. "I am going to do everything in my power to protect this family and this land. That is a promise." Luke nodded solemnly, then ran back inside, presumably to try to comfort his older brother. Cole stood slowly, his knees protesting the movement. He was only 34, but sometimes felt twice that age. "The boy is not wrong," old Jack said quietly. "You could not save Beth. You cannot change the past. But you can sure as hell fight for the future. Question is, are you ready to do what needs to be done?" "What do you mean?" Jack pushed himself up from the rocking chair with effort. "Come to my cabin tonight. There is something about Beth I need to tell you, something I should have told you 2 years ago. But first you need to solve your immediate problem. You need help running this ranch. You need someone to care for those boys while you fight to save what is theirs. You need a wife." Cole finished the thought, crystallizing with sudden clarity. "Not a wife for love or romance. That ship has sailed for you, son, but a practical arrangement. Someone who needs what you can offer as much as you need what they can provide. A partnership of necessity." Cole stared at his father. "You cannot be serious." "I am deadly serious. You think you are the first widower to need a helpmate. Half the marriages in the Montana Territory started as practical arrangements. Some of them even turned into something more. But that is not the point. The point is survival. Your survival, those boys' survival, this ranch's survival. And where exactly would I find a woman desperate enough to marry a broken-down widower with more debt than assets?" Old Jack's weathered face cracked into something that might have been a smile. "Son, this is Montana in winter. Desperation is the one resource we have in surplus. You just need to know where to look." Cole thought about that conversation as he rode into Bitterroot later that morning. The town was not much to look at, just a main street with a dozen buildings. Miller's General Store, Henderson's Bank, the saloon, a church, a doctor's office that was empty more often than not, and a few other establishments that served the scattered ranching community. He tied his horse outside the bank, dreading the conversation he was about to have. Samuel Henderson, the banker, was a good man in his way, but he had a business to run. Personal sympathies did not pay dividends to the bank's investors back east. The interior of the bank was warm, heated by a potbelly stove in the corner. Henderson looked up from his desk as Cole entered, and the expression on his face told Cole this was not going to be pleasant. "Cole, I was expecting you might stop by." "Mr. Henderson." Cole removed his hat, holding it in both hands. "I came to discuss my loan situation." Henderson gestured to a chair. "Please sit. Can I offer you coffee?" "No, thank you. I would rather get straight to business." The banker nodded, shuffling some papers on his desk before meeting Cole's eyes. "I'm sorry, Cole. I truly am. Your father and I have known each other for 30 years. I baptized your sons. I attended Beth's funeral. But I have a responsibility to the bank's investors." "I understand. I am not here to beg for mercy. I am here to discuss terms. I need until spring to sell cattle at proper market value. If you can extend the loan." Henderson shook his head before Cole could finish. "That is what I needed to tell you. The decision is no longer mine to make. The bank sold your debt." Cole felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath him. "Sold it to whom?" "A land speculation company out of Denver, Dakota Land and Railroad. The man representing them is Marcus Harrington. He is quite interested in your property, Cole. In fact, he has been buying up land all along the proposed railroad route. And he bought my debt to force a foreclosure." "Not necessarily. He might be willing to negotiate, but you would need to speak with him directly. His office is above the saloon. He has been in town for about 18 months now." Cole stood, his mind racing. "Thank you for your honesty, Samuel." "Cole, wait." Henderson stood as well. "There is something else. Harrington asked specific questions about your financial situation, about Beth's death, about your family. Someone has been feeding him information. I wanted you to know that it was not me, but someone in town is talking." "I appreciate the warning." Cole left the bank and stood for a moment on the wooden sidewalk, trying to process this new information. Someone wanted his land badly enough to buy his debt, and they had inside knowledge about his situation. That meant planning patience and resources. He was not dealing with a simple opportunist. This was a coordinated campaign. He was about to head to the saloon to confront this Marcus Harrington when he spotted Reverend Samuel Grant emerging from the church. The elderly minister saw Cole and made his way across the street, his black coat flapping in the wind. "Cole Blackwood, just the man I wanted to see. Do you have a moment?" "Reverend?" Cole nodded respectfully. He was not particularly religious, but he respected Grant's dedication to the community. "I have been meaning to speak with you about young Ben and Luke. They have not been attending Sunday school lately." "I apologize, Reverend. We have been distracted by ranch business." Grant's weathered face softened with sympathy. "I understand. These are difficult times for you. But the boys need spiritual guidance, especially now. They need structure and education. I know, I am not equipped to provide what they need right now. Which is why I wanted to mention Miss Catherine Morgan. You know her, the school teacher." Cole had seen her around town a few times. A slender woman in her mid-20s, always dressed simply but neatly, carrying herself with a quiet dignity that suggested good breeding fallen on hard times. "I know who she is." "Well, she is no longer the school teacher. The territorial government cut funding for the school last week. Poor girl has no position, no income, and winter coming on. I have been trying to help her find work, but there is precious little available in Bitterroot." Cole felt a strange sensation, as if pieces of a puzzle were clicking into place without his conscious direction. "What sort of work is she seeking?" "Anything respectable. She is well-educated, hard-working, and of excellent moral character. A bit proud, perhaps, but that is understandable given her circumstances. She comes from a good Ohio family that fell on hard times. No family here, no prospects." Grant paused, studying Cole's face. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious." Cole's mind was working rapidly now, seeing possibilities he had not considered before. "Where might I find Miss Morgan if I wanted to speak with her?" Last I heard, she was staying in a room above Miller's store, but Samuel Miller needs that space for paying tenants. I fear she may have already been asked to leave. Grant's expression turned thoughtful. Cole, I know that look. What are you planning? Perhaps nothing. Perhaps something that could help both Miss Morgan and myself. Thank you, Reverend. Cole left the minister standing on the sidewalk looking puzzled and made his way to Miller's general store. Sarah Miller, the proprietor's wife, was behind the counter measuring out flour for an elderly customer. When she saw Cole, her expression became carefully neutral. Mr. Blackwood, what can I do for you? I am looking for Miss Catherine Morgan. I was told she might be here. Sarah's lips tightened. She is not here at the moment. And even if she was, I am not sure it would be proper for you to seek her out, a widower and a single woman. I have business to discuss with her, of a professional nature. Professional? Sarah's skepticism was evident. Mr. Blackwood, that girl is in a desperate situation. I would hate to see anyone take advantage of that desperation. Mrs. Miller, you have known me all my life. Have you ever known me to take advantage of anyone? Sarah's expression softened slightly. No, I suppose not. She left about an hour ago. I told her she could not stay past tonight. I need the room for a paying tenant. I saw her walking toward the edge of town carrying that old carpet bag of hers. Everything she owns in the world fits in that one small bag, Cole. It breaks my heart. Cole thanked her and left quickly. The edge of town was not far, and he had a good idea where a desperate woman with nowhere to go might be found. Sure enough, as he rode past the last few buildings, he saw a slender figure in a dark blue coat standing beneath a cottonwood tree. Catherine Morgan had her back to him, but he could see the rigid set of her shoulders, the way she clutched that carpet bag as if it were the only solid thing in an uncertain world. He pulled his horse to a stop about 30 feet away and simply watched her for a moment. She stood there for perhaps 5 minutes unmoving, staring out at the open plains beyond the town. Cole wondered what she was thinking. Was she considering walking into that wilderness? People died of exposure every winter in Montana. The territory was beautiful but merciless to the unprepared. Finally, as if reaching some decision, she turned. That was when she saw him. For a moment, they simply looked at each other across the distance. Even from here, Cole could see the intelligence in her eyes, the pride in the tilt of her chin, despite her obvious circumstances. She did not look away or show embarrassment at being found in such a situation. Instead, she walked directly toward him. Mr. Blackwood, she said when she was close enough to speak without shouting. Her voice was steady, educated, with a hint of Eastern refinement. Are you lost? No, ma'am. Are you? That depends on your definition of lost. Geographically, no. In other respects, she let the sentence trail off, then seemed to gather herself. Was there something you needed? Cole dismounted, standing before her with his hat in his hands. Up close, he could see that her coat was well made but worn patched carefully in places. Her gloves had holes at the fingertips, and despite her attempt at composure, he could see the fear lurking behind her eyes. I was told you recently lost your position at the school. News travels fast in small towns. Yes, Mr. Blackwood, the territorial government eliminated funding. I am no longer employed. Her chin lifted higher. If you have come to offer charity, you can save your breath. I am quite capable of taking care of myself. I have no doubt you are. But winter is coming, and taking care of oneself becomes considerably more difficult when one has nowhere to sleep and no source of income. Color rose in her cheeks. My situation is not your concern. Perhaps not, but I have a proposition that might benefit us both. Catherine's eyes narrowed. If you are suggesting what I think you are suggesting, Mr. Blackwood, I am not that desperate. Despite the gravity of the situation, Cole felt his lips twitch with something that might have been amusement. I am suggesting employment, Miss Morgan, of a very particular nature. But perhaps this conversation would be better conducted somewhere warmer. A storm is coming. He gestured at the dark clouds gathering on the horizon. Would you be willing to ride to my ranch to discuss the detail? Ride alone with you, that would hardly be proper. Neither is freezing to death under a tree. Miss Morgan, am not going to pretend I am offering anything conventional, but I am offering it honestly in good faith and with the understanding that you are free to refuse and walk away at any time. I am asking for 1 hour of your time to hear what I have to say. After that, the choice is entirely yours. Catherine studied him for a long moment. Cole could almost see her weighing options, calculating odds, measuring desperation against risk. Finally, she nodded once. 1 hour, Mr. Blackwood. But I warn you, I am not easily impressed by grand houses or wealthy ranchers. Good, Cole said quietly, because I am neither grand nor particularly wealthy anymore. What I am is a man in need of help speaking to a woman who might need what I can offer. Nothing more, nothing less. He helped her onto his horse and swung up behind her. The ride to the ranch took 20 minutes, during which neither of them spoke. Cole was acutely aware of her rigid posture, the way she held herself carefully apart from him, even while sitting in front of him on the saddle. When they reached the ranch, old Jack was still on the porch. He watched their approach with keen interest, but said nothing as Cole helped Catherine down from the horse. Miss Morgan, this is my father, John Blackwood. Sir, Catherine nodded respectfully. Miss? Jack's eyes traveled over her, assessing in the way of men who had spent lifetimes judging the worth of horses and cattle and people. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him, because he nodded slightly to Cole before disappearing into the house. Cole led Catherine inside, noting the way her eyes widened slightly at the spacious interior. The house was well-built, solid timber construction with good furniture and glass windows. But there was something empty about it, something missing that Cole had not been able to name until this moment. No flowers in vases, no embroidered cushions, no small decorative items that turned a house into a home. It was clean and functional, but cold. Please sit. Cole gestured to a chair in the front room. I will make coffee. I can make it, Catherine said automatically, then caught herself. I apologize. That was presumptuous. Not at all. The kitchen is through there if you would prefer. They ended up in the kitchen together, and Cole found himself oddly aware of how natural it felt to have another adult presence in this space. Catherine moved efficiently, finding cups and coffee without needing to ask where things were kept. Her hands, he noticed, were steady despite her circumstances. When they were seated across from each other at the kitchen table, steaming cups before them, Cole began. I am going to be direct, Miss Morgan, because I suspect you appreciate honesty more than flowery speeches. I need a wife. Catherine's hand froze halfway to her cup. Excuse me. Not for romance or companionship, though both would be pleasant. I need a wife for practical reasons. I have 2 young sons who desperately need a mother's care and education. I have a ranch to run that requires my full attention if I am to save it from foreclosure, and I have a social standing that is suffering because a widowed man alone with children is viewed as problematic. Mr. Blackwood, let me finish, please. I am offering you a position as my wife in name and function, but with clearly defined terms. You would have your own room. No expectations of marital obligations unless and until you chose otherwise. You would manage the household, educate my sons, and represent this family in social situations. In return, you would have security shelter, a generous monthly allowance of $50, and the freedom to pursue your own interests, including establishing a school here if you wished. Catherine set down her cup with a hand that now trembled slightly. You are serious. Completely serious. I am not asking you to love me or my children, though I would hope respect and perhaps affection might develop over time. I am offering you a business arrangement, a contract, if you will, 2 people helping each other through difficult circumstances. Why me? Surely there are other women. Reverend Grant spoke highly of your character and education. I have observed you in town and noted your dignity even in hardship. And he paused, choosing his words carefully. And I need someone strong enough to understand that this is a practical arrangement, not a romantic fairy tale. Someone intelligent enough to run a household. Someone desperate enough to say yes. The last words hung in the air between them. Catherine's eyes flashed, and for a moment Cole thought she might throw the coffee in his face. But instead she laughed. It was a bitter sound, but genuine. Well, at least you are honest about my desperation. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the ranch spreading before them. What you are describing, Mr. Blackwood, is basically hiring a housekeeper with social privileges. I am describing a partnership. Yes, there are practical elements, but you would be my wife in the eyes of the law and community. You would have rights and protections. If something happened to me, you would be provided for. This is not servitude, this is mutual survival. And if I refuse, then I will take you back to town with my thanks for considering my offer. No hard feelings, no judgment. You will have lost nothing but an hour of your time. Catherine turned to face him. In the light from the window, he could see that she was younger than he had first thought, perhaps only 25. Her face had been worn by worry and hardship, aging her prematurely. But her eyes were clear and intelligent. I need to think about this. Of course, the storm. Cole glanced out the window. The dark clouds were much closer now, and the first fat snowflakes were beginning to fall. The storm is here. You are welcome to stay the night. There is a small room on the first floor that was meant for a housekeeper. You would be perfectly safe and chaperoned, as my father and sons are here. Before Catherine could answer, the sound of running feet announced the arrival of Ben and Luke. They skidded to a stop in the kitchen doorway, staring at the strange woman. Boys, Cole said firmly, this is Miss Catherine Morgan. She is a guest. What do you say? Hello, Luke offered shyly. Are you the lady Papa said might come? Cole felt Catherine's sharp gaze fix on him. Damn, the boy had given away that this was not as spontaneous as he had implied. Luke, Cole said carefully, why don't you and Ben show Miss Morgan to the guest room? She will be staying the night because of the storm. Ben, who had been silent, finally spoke. Is she going to be our new mother? The bluntness of children. Cole saw Catherine's face pale slightly. That has not been decided, Ben. Miss Morgan and I are discussing possibilities. Now please show her to her room and be polite. After the boys had led Catherine away, Cole leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. He had shown his hand too soon and she knew it now. He had been planning this, waiting for her. That made him seem calculating, manipulative even. He could only hope she would see past that to the practical truth of the arrangement. An hour later, as full darkness fell and the snow began to fall in earnest, Cole found himself in his father's cabin. The small structure behind the main house was warm from the potbelly stove, and old Jack sat in his favorite chair with a glass of whiskey. She is still here, Jack observed. That is a good sign. Or just a sign that the weather has trapped her. Your mother stayed for the weather at first too. 6 months later, we were married. 25 years after that, she died in my arms. Best decision I ever made, choosing practical over passion. Cole had heard the story before, but tonight it felt different, more relevant. Catherine knows I planned for her to come. Luke let it slip. And she is too smart not to realize that makes me look manipulative. Jack poured a second glass of whiskey and handed it to his son. Cole, that woman is educated and intelligent. She will see through any pretty lies to the truth anyway. Better to be honestly calculating than dishonestly romantic. Now there is something I need to tell you about Beth. Something you should know before you bring another woman into this house. Cole felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. What about Beth? About 2 months before she died, she came to me, asked me about a man named William Hartley. The name meant nothing to Cole. Who is that? Someone she knew before she came to Montana. Someone she had feelings for. She wanted to know if I thought it was wrong for a married woman to still think about a man from her past. Cole felt as if he had been punched. Beth was in love with someone else. I do not know if it was love's son, but she was not entirely happy. She tried to be. She loved you in her way, and she loved the boys completely. But there was a part of her that always wondered about the life she did not choose. I told her that was natural, that every person has roads not taken. But I think it troubled her more than she let on. Why are you telling me this now? Because I want you to understand something. Marriage is complicated. Even the best marriages have shadows and secrets and regrets. You put Beth on a pedestal after she died, made her into a saint in your mind. But she was human, Cole. She had doubts and desires and dreams that did not always align with reality. If you marry this Catherine woman, you need to understand that she will be human too. Flawed, complicated, maybe even harboring her own regrets. That does not make the arrangement any less valuable. It just makes it honest. Cole drained his whiskey in one swallow, feeling it burn down his throat. Did Beth ever write to this William Hartley? I do not know, but I found some letters once hidden in her sewing basket. Drafts I think that she never sent. I did not read them all, and I never told you. After she died, I could not bring myself to burn them. I hid them in the bottom drawer of your desk, thinking you might need to understand her better someday. But now with this Harrington fellow buying up your debt, asking questions about your family, Cole Hartley and Harrington are awful similar names. The implications hit Cole like a physical blow. You think this man trying to take my ranch might be Beth's former love? I think it is a hell of a coincidence if not. And I do not believe in coincidences, which means you need to be very careful, son. You might be fighting a man who wants more than just land. He might want revenge for the woman you took from him. Cole sat in silence processing this information. His perfect memory of Beth was fracturing, revealing complexity he had never suspected. His current crisis might be personal rather than purely financial. And he was asking a desperate woman to step into a situation far more complicated than a simple marriage of convenience. I should tell Catherine all of this before she decides. It is only fair. Fair, Jack laughed harshly. Son, there is no fair in survival. You tell her what she needs to know when she needs to know it. Right now, she needs to know you can offer her safety and purpose. The rest can wait. Cole left his father's cabin and returned to the main house. The boys were already asleep, and he found Catherine sitting in the front room, staring into the fire. She looked up as he entered. The boys are sweet, she said quietly. Luke told me about his mother, about the babies who died. He does not remember much, but Ben does. That older boy is carrying a lot of pain, Mr. Blackwood. I know, I wish I could fix it. Some things cannot be fixed, only endured and eventually healed from. Catherine stood, wrapping her arms around herself. I have been thinking about your offer. And I have questions, legal questions. If I died, would any children I might have be provided for if you died? What would be my rights to remain here? Could I truly establish a school? Cole felt a flicker of hope. These were practical questions, the questions of someone seriously considering the arrangement. I would have our lawyer draw up a contract specifying all of that. Any children would be full heirs. You would have lifetime rights to live here and a generous allowance if I died first. And yes, you could absolutely establish a school. We have room upstairs that would be perfect. Catherine nodded slowly. One more question. Do you believe in honesty between spouses even in a practical marriage? I do. Then I need you to tell me honestly. Is there any reason I should fear living here? Any danger I should know about? Cole thought about the debt, about Marcus Harrington, about the possibility that this was all connected to Beth's past. He thought about his father's advice to only tell what was necessary, and he made a choice. There are men who want this land. They have been making moves to force me to sell. There could be trouble ahead. I will not lie and say life here will be easy or safe, but I will protect you with everything I have. That is a promise I can make. Catherine studied his face for a long moment. At least you are honest about the risks. Very well, Mr. Blackwood. Ask me again in the morning after I have slept on it. If my answer is still yes in the cold light of day, then we have an arrangement. Fair enough. Good night, Miss Morgan. Good night, Mr. Blackwood. Cole lay awake most of that night, listening to the wind howl and the snow pile against the windows. He thought about Beth and her secrets about William Hartley, who might be Marcus Harrington, about the ranch he was fighting to save, and the desperate woman sleeping under his roof who might be his only chance at survival. Somewhere in the depths of the night, he made peace with the choices ahead of him. Love had brought him Beth, and Beth had died in agony. Practicality might bring him Catherine, and practicality might save his sons and his legacy. Perhaps his father was right. Perhaps practical was better than passionate after all. When morning came cold and bright, he found Catherine already in the kitchen making coffee. She turned as he entered, and he saw the decision in her eyes before she spoke. Yes, she said simply, I will marry you, Mr. Blackwood, with one additional condition. Name it. Whatever happens, whatever trials we face, the boys must always come first. Their care, their education, their happiness. That must be our primary commitment. Can you agree to that? Cole extended his hand across the kitchen table. I can. Do we have a deal, Miss Morgan? Catherine looked at his outstretched hand for a moment, and he wondered if she would back out at this final instant. But then she reached out and gripped his hand firmly. Her palm was warm against his, her grip surprisingly strong. We have a deal, Mr. Blackwood. They shook hands like two businessmen concluding a contract, And in that moment, Cole felt something shift in his life. He had made a choice. For better or worse, he had taken action to protect his family and his legacy. The rest would unfold as it would. I will ride to town tomorrow and speak to Reverend Grant, he said. It should take about 4 days to arrange everything legally. Are you comfortable staying here until then? I have nowhere else to be, and the boys will need time to adjust to the idea. As if summoned by the mention of them, Ben and Luke appeared in the kitchen doorway. Luke ran immediately to Catherine as children do when they sense safety. Are you going to stay? He asked hopefully. For a while, yes. Good. Papa is not very good at making breakfast. Even Ben smiled slightly at that. Cole felt a warmth in his chest that he had not experienced in 2 years. His sons were responding to Catherine already. Perhaps this could actually work. The next days passed in a blur of arrangements. Reverend Grant agreed to perform the ceremony, though his disapproval was evident in every word. Mrs. Clara Dawson, a neighboring widow, offered to serve as witness and prepare a simple meal afterward. The town lawyer William Burke drew up a contract that specified all the terms Catherine had requested. And through it all, Cole watched Catherine integrate herself into his household with quiet efficiency. She cleaned without being asked. She taught the boys their letters in the afternoons. She spoke to old Jack with the same respectful interest she showed everyone. She was exactly what she had promised to be: competent, educated, dignified, and pragmatic. The only thing that troubled Cole was the growing awareness that he found her attractive. Not in the wild, passionate way he had desired Beth, but in a quieter, steadier manner. He appreciated the intelligence in her eyes, the grace of her movements, the sound of her laugh when Luke told a silly joke. This was not supposed to be about attraction. This was supposed to be purely practical. But apparently his heart had not received that message. On the fourth day, as promised, they gathered in the front parlor for the wedding. Reverend Grant stood before them with his Bible, looking as if he were conducting a funeral rather than a marriage. Mrs. Dawson sat in a chair near the window, knitting and occasionally dabbing at her eyes. Old Jack stood beside Cole, straight and proud despite his failing health. And the boys stood near Catherine, Luke holding her hand, and even Ben standing close enough to show acceptance. This is highly irregular, Grant said for the third time. Marriage is a sacred institution, not a business transaction. With respect, Reverend, Cole replied calmly, the marriage will be legal and binding. The reasons behind it are between Miss Morgan and myself. Grant huffed but began the ceremony. The words washed over Cole in a blur. He was acutely aware of Catherine standing beside him in her simple blue dress, the same one she had worn when she arrived. She had done her best to make it festive with a white collar, but it was clear she owned nothing better. When it came time for the vows, Cole spoke the traditional words with sincerity. He might not love Catherine, but he respected her, and he would honor these promises. Then Catherine spoke her vows, and Cole was struck by the firmness in her voice. This woman was no shrinking flower. She was claiming her place in this family with confidence. You may kiss the bride, Reverend Durant said, sounding as if the words pained him. Cole looked at Catherine, seeing the slight nervousness in her eyes. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. But she stood still, and he pressed his lips gently to hers. The kiss was brief, chaste, nothing more than a formality, but Cole felt it nonetheless, a small spark of connection that surprised him. I present Mr. and Mrs. James Cole Blackwood, Grant announced without enthusiasm. Welcome to the family, Mrs. Blackwood, Mrs. Dawson said warmly, embracing Catherine. May you find happiness here. Catherine returned the embrace. Thank you. I hope I can be worthy of the name. Luke tugged on Catherine's skirt. Are you really our mama now? Catherine knelt down, bringing herself to eye level with the boy. If you would like me to be, I can never replace your first mama, Luke, but I can love you and Ben in my own way. Would that be acceptable? Luke threw his arms around her neck. Yes. Even Ben, watching from a few feet away, did not object. Cole caught his older son's eye and saw something that might have been relief. The boy was tired of carrying the weight of the family on his small shoulders. He was ready to share that burden. After a simple meal of bread, cheese, and preserved fruit, the guests departed. Old Jack returned to his cabin with a knowing smile, and Cole found himself alone with his new wife, unsure what to say or do next. I will show you to your room, he offered finally. The one upstairs. It was Beth's room, but it is yours now. You can change anything you like. Catherine followed him up the stairs in silence. When he opened the door to the master bedroom, she stepped inside and stood very still, taking it all in. The large bed with its blue and yellow quilt, the writing desk by the window, the wardrobe full of another woman's clothes. Her things are still here, Catherine said quietly. I can have them moved if you prefer. No, not yet. Opened it, running her fingers over the silk and wool dresses hanging there. These are beautiful. She had good taste. She came from a wealthy family before they lost everything in the panic of '73. Catherine turned to face him. You loved her very much, did you not? Cole could have lied, could have said what he thought she wanted to hear, but he had promised honesty. I did. In the beginning, it felt like I would die without her, but love was not enough to save her. And now I am not sure what I feel. Guilt mostly, regret, the sense that I failed her. You did not fail her, Cole. Life failed her, failed. Medicine failed her. Fate failed her. You did everything you could. It was the first time she had used his given name, and the sound of it from her lips felt surprisingly intimate. I hope you are right. I will leave you to settle in. My room is at the end of the hall if you need anything. Cole, Catherine stopped him as he turned to leave. Thank you for being honest with me, for treating me with respect. I know this is not a conventional marriage, but I will do my best to be a good wife and mother to your sons. And I will do my best to be a good husband to you. Perhaps that is all we can promise each other for now. That night, Cole lay in his bed at the far end of the hall and thought about the woman now sleeping in Beth's room. He wondered if he had done the right thing bringing a stranger into his home and his life. He wondered if Catherine would stay when things got difficult, as they inevitably would. And he wondered with a mixture of hope and fear if this practical arrangement might somehow become something more. 3 floors below in the guest cabin, old Jack sat by his fire and smiled into the flames. His son had made a good choice, whether Cole knew it yet or not. The school teacher had steel in her spine and fire in her eyes. She would need both for what was coming. And in town, in the office above the saloon, Marcus Harrington sat at his desk reading a telegram from Denver. His hands shook slightly as he read the news that Cole Blackwood had just married. Married while Beth barely 2 years in the ground. Married to another woman while the woman Harrington had loved died alone in this godforsaken wilderness. He crumpled the telegram and threw it into the fire. Then he pulled out a ledger and made a notation in careful script. December 1st, increased pressure. Blackwood must be removed by year-end. The war for the Blackwood Ranch had entered a new phase, and none of the participants yet understood just how high the stakes truly were. The first Sunday after the wedding arrived with crystalline cold, the kind that made breath hang frozen in the air and turned the landscape into a study of white and gray. Cole stood in front of the mirror in his bedroom, adjusting the black string tie that felt tight around his neck. He had not worn his Sunday suit since Beth's funeral 2 years ago, and the fabric seemed to carry the memory of that day like a stain. Behind him, he could hear Catherine moving about in what had been Beth's room, now hers. The sounds were different from what he remembered. Beth had moved with quick, nervous energy, always rushing. Catherine was deliberate, methodical. He could picture her laying out her clothes with care, making the most of her limited wardrobe. They had been married 5 days now, and those days had established a pattern. Catherine rose early, prepared breakfast with quiet efficiency, tended to the boys, managed the household. Cole worked the ranch from dawn until dark, coming home exhausted to find hot meals and clean clothes in a house that felt lived in again. They spoke politely, worked together smoothly, and maintained careful distance. It was exactly the practical arrangement they had agreed to. So why did Cole find himself increasingly aware of every moment she was near? Why did the sound of her voice reading to the boys make something in his chest tighten? He pushed the thoughts aside and headed downstairs. The boys were already dressed. Ben in his dark wool suit and Luke in slightly too small trousers that showed his ankles. Catherine had done her best, but there was only so much that could be done with hand-me-downs and limited funds. Catherine herself appeared moments later, and Cole felt his breath catch. She wore the same blue dress from the wedding, but she had added a shawl that must have been Beth's, a delicate cream-colored wool embroidered with small flowers. On her, it looked different. Where Beth had worn it with careless elegance, Catherine wore it with deliberate dignity. "Ready?" he asked. "As ready as one can be for public judgment." Catherine replied with a slight smile that did not quite reach her eyes. The ride to town took 40 minutes in the wagon. Ben and Luke sat in the back chattering about friends they hoped to see. Cole and Catherine sat on the driver's bench close enough that their shoulders occasionally touched as the wagon bounced over frozen ruts. Each time it happened, Cole was aware of it in a way that felt far too intimate for their business-like arrangement. As they approached the church, Cole saw the other families gathering. Wagons and horses lined the street, people clustered in small groups on the wooden sidewalk. The conversation seemed animated until the Blackwood wagon came into view. Then one by one, voices fell silent. Cole felt Catherine stiffen beside him. He reached over without thinking and placed his hand briefly over hers, where it rested on her lap. "Do not let them see fear," he said quietly. "Hold your head high." She nodded once, and when he helped her down from the wagon, she stood straight and proud despite the dozens of eyes watching their every move. The whispers started immediately, sharp, sibilant sounds that carried on the cold air. Quick work, was it not, Beth, not even cold in her grave? School teacher thinks she landed herself quite a prize. Wonder what she had to offer to get him to marry so fast. Cole felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his expression neutral. Catherine's hand on his arm trembled slightly, but her face remained composed. Together they walked toward the church entrance, Ben and Luke flanking them like young soldiers. Inside, the scrutiny intensified. The Blackwood family pew was in the third row, the same pew where Beth had sat holding Luke as a baby, while Ben stood proud beside her. Cole saw several people glance at that pew, then at Catherine, making the comparison clear. Reverend Grant's sermon was about charity and Christian kindness, which struck Cole as bitterly ironic, given the hostile atmosphere in the church. But he sat through it, keeping his eyes forward, acutely aware of Catherine beside him and the weight of judgment pressing down from all sides. After the service came the real trial. The congregation gathered outside for their weekly social hour, and Cole knew there was no avoiding it. He could see Mrs. Samuel Henderson, the banker's wife, already moving toward them, with several other women in tow, like a warship with escort vessels. "Mrs. Blackwood," Mrs. Henderson said with a smile that looked painted on, "how are you finding married life? Quite different from teaching school, I imagine." "Different, yes," Catherine replied evenly, "but rewarding in its own way. I am sure it must be. Such a lovely home, and of course the security that comes with marrying so well." The emphasis on security made Mrs. Henderson's meaning clear. Catherine had married for money and position, not love. Other women gathered around, drawn by the promise of gossip like flies to honey. Mrs. Patterson, who had taught at the school before Catherine, joined them with false sympathy dripping from every word. It must be difficult stepping into dear Beth's shoes. She was so beloved by everyone who knew her. Beth was certainly special, Catherine agreed, refusing to take the bait. The boys speak of her with such love. "Oh, she was more than special," chimed in Mrs. Jenkins, the town's midwife and self-appointed guardian of Beth's memory. "She was practically a saint, the way she cared for everyone in the community, always bringing soup to the sick, helping with birthings. Why, when my youngest was born, Beth sat with me for 3 days straight, barely sleeping." The other women nodded and murmured agreement, building Beth into a figure of impossible perfection. Cole understood what was happening. They were setting a standard that Catherine could never meet, measuring her against a ghost that grew more saintly with each retelling. "She sounds like a remarkable woman," Catherine said quietly. "I hope I can serve this community even half as well." "Do they?" Mrs. Henderson's eyebrows rose in theatrical surprise. "And how are the poor dears adjusting to having a stranger suddenly thrust into their mother's place?" Before Catherine could respond, a small voice piped up from behind her. Luke had apparently been listening, and now he stepped forward with the fearless honesty of childhood. "She is not a stranger. She is our new mama, and she teaches us letters and knows how to tie sailor knots, and she makes Papa smile." The women looked taken aback by the boy's forthright defense. Cole felt a surge of pride in his younger son, and he could see Catherine fighting to keep her composure. "Well," Mrs. Patterson said stiffly, "children do adapt quickly to new circumstances." "They do indeed," said a new voice. Mrs. Clara Dawson approached with the determined expression of a woman on a mission. "And Catherine here has done wonders with those boys. You should see how well behaved they are now, how much young Luke has learned in just a few days." Cole felt gratitude for the older woman's support, but Mrs. Henderson was not deterred. Oh, I am sure Mrs. Blackwood is adequate in her domestic duties. It is just that some of us remember when this family was the heart of our community. Beth organized the church socials, led the ladies' auxiliary coordinated help for families in need. Such big shoes to fill. The challenge was unmistakable. Catherine was expected not just to be a wife and mother, but to take on all of Beth's community roles as well. Roles for which she had no training and even less social capital. I am sure Catherine will find her own way to contribute, Mrs. Dawson said firmly. Every person brings different gifts to a community. Of course, Mrs. Henderson agreed with a smile sharp as winter wind, though we do hope those gifts will be substantial. The Blackwood family has always been so generous with their time and resources. Cole had heard enough. He was about to intervene when a commotion near the church steps drew everyone's attention. Billy Henderson, the banker's son, and Ben were facing off with fists raised. Cole strode over quickly, placing a firm hand on Ben's shoulder. "What is going on here?" "He said my new mama was just a gold digger." Ben burst out, tears of anger streaming down his face. "He said she only married you for money and does not really care about us." The silence that followed was absolute. Every conversation in the churchyard stopped. Cole looked from his son to Billy Henderson to the ring of adults watching the drama unfold. Then he turned his gaze deliberately to Mrs. Henderson. "Billy," Cole said quietly, his voice carrying clearly in the stillness, "I think you owe my wife an apology." "I was just repeating what I heard," Billy mumbled, glancing nervously at his mother. "Then perhaps," Cole continued, his gaze still fixed on Mrs. Henderson, "you need to be more careful about what you listen to, and perhaps adults should consider their words more carefully when little ears are present." Mrs. Henderson's face flushed red. Several people looked away uncomfortably. Cole had just publicly rebuked one of the most prominent women in the community, and everyone knew it. "My mama does too care about us," Luke added, stepping forward to stand beside his brother. "She makes our breakfast every morning and reads us stories, and she fixed my torn shirt without even being asked, and she promised she would not leave us even when things get hard." The simple, heartfelt declaration from a 5-year-old carried more weight than all the adult posturing. Cole saw several faces soften. Even Mrs. Patterson looked slightly abashed. Ben, apparently inspired by his little brother's courage, stepped up beside Luke. "And she is teaching us to read properly. And she knows all about numbers and history. And she makes Papa smile sometimes, real smiles, not just polite ones." This last observation seemed to surprise even Catherine, who looked at Cole with something like wonder. Cole felt heat rise in his face but did not look away from his sons. "Thank you, boys," he said. "I think that settles any questions about whether your new mother cares for you." Mrs. Henderson, clearly realizing the tide had turned against her, attempted to salvage the situation. "Well, of course the children are fond of their new stepmother. Children are naturally adaptable." "They are," agreed Mrs. Wilson, one of the quieter church ladies who rarely involved herself in gossip. "But children are also honest about what they see. If they say Mrs. Blackwood cares for them, then she does." Other voices began to murmur agreement, and Cole realized that the boy's spontaneous defense had accomplished what all Catherine's careful politeness could not. They had vouched for her character in terms no one could argue with. The gathering began to disperse, people returning to their normal conversations. Several women made a point of speaking to Catherine with genuine warmth for the first time. Cole watched his wife handle each interaction with grace, neither gloating over the small victory nor showing the relief he knew she must feel. On the wagon ride home, the boys chattered excitedly about their defense of their new mother. Catherine sat quietly beside Cole, her hands folded in her lap. Finally, when the boys' attention had turned to other things, she spoke softly. "Thank you for standing up for me back there. You are my wife. They are my children. What affects you affects all of us." The boys were very brave today. They were, and very honest. Cole paused, then asked the question that had been bothering him since Ben's outburst. "Do I really smile more now?" Real smiles. Catherine turned to look at him, and in the pale winter sunlight he could see warmth in her eyes that had not been there before. "Sometimes, when you are not thinking about it, when you watch the boys playing or when you come in from work and find hot coffee waiting. Small moments, but yes, you smile." "I had not realized." "It is not a bad thing, Cole. It just means you are settling into this new life we are building. Sweet, Cole repeated, tasting the word. Yes, I suppose we are building something together, are we not? Catherine nodded, and for the rest of the journey home, Cole found himself thinking about that simple word. We. Not you and I, but we. When had that shift happened? Chapter 8. Blood on Snow. The attacks began 3 days after the confrontation at church. Cole had been expecting something after his meeting with Marcus Harrington a week earlier, but he had hoped for more time to prepare. Hope, as his father often said, was a poor strategy. Tom Fletcher found the first evidence when he rode out to check the north pastures just after dawn. Cole was in the barn saddling his horse when Tom came galloping back, his face grim. "Boss, we have got a problem. Big problem." Cole followed Tom out to the north fence line where 15 head of cattle lay dead in the snow. Not scattered by predators or disease, but clustered together where someone had driven them before shooting them. The fence had been cut in 3 places. Clean cuts made with wire cutters, not torn by animals or weather. "This is deliberate," Cole said, his voice flat. He knelt beside one of the dead cows examining the bullet wound. "Rifle shot probably from cover over there." He pointed to a cluster of rocks about 100 yards away. "Professional work. They knew what they were doing." "Why kill them?" Tom asked. "If they wanted to rustle cattle, they would drive them off. This is just waste. It is a message. Someone wants me to know they can hurt me whenever they choose." Over the next 2 weeks, the attacks escalated. 20 cattle disappeared from the south pasture, driven off through cut fence with no trace. The small barn that stored hay was set ablaze in the middle of the night, destroying 500 bushels of winter feed. 2 horses were found shot in their corral, killed but not stolen. Cole responded the only way he knew how, with military precision. He divided the ranch into 4 sectors and set up 24-hour patrols. He installed a signal system using mirrors to communicate across distances. He distributed weapons to his men and established prepared fighting positions at key points around the ranch. Old Jack, drawing on his Civil War experience, helped Cole plan the defenses. "You are facing guerrilla tactics, son. Hit and run meant to wear you down without direct confrontation. The key is to force them into a situation where they have to stand and fight." "How do I do that?" "You find what they want most and make them come for it. Right now, they are bleeding you slow. Make them commit to a real attack, and you will know there is strength in tactics." Catherine, who had been listening from the kitchen where she was preparing the midday meal, spoke up. "Is that wise, inviting an attack?" "It is necessary," Old Jack replied. "Right now we are playing defense, and defense always loses eventually. We need to take control of the engagement." Catherine set down her knife and turned to face them. "Then I want to help. I can shoot. My father taught me." Cole shook his head immediately. "Shooting game is different from shooting men." "I understand that, but if you are preparing for a real attack, you need every able person armed and ready. Unless you think I am incapable." There was challenge in her voice, and Cole recognized it for what it was. She was claiming her place in this fight, asserting her right to defend what was now hers as much as his. "All right," he conceded, "but we do this properly. Tom, get the Winchester from the cabinet. Catherine, come with me." He spent the next hour teaching her the mechanics of the Winchester Model 1873, a 16-shot repeating rifle that had become standard on the frontier. He showed her how to load the magazine work, the lever action, sight down the barrel. He corrected her stance, adjusted her grip, taught her to breathe and squeeze, rather than jerk the trigger. She was a quick learner, he had to admit. After 20 shots at a scarecrow 50 yards distant, she was hitting center mass with reasonable consistency. "You will do," he said grudgingly, "but I hope to God you never have to use this against a person." "So do I," Catherine replied, lowering the rifle. "But I would rather know how and not need to than need to and not know how." That evening, as Cole was going over defense plans with Tom and Miguel Santos in the study, a rider came thundering up to the house. It was Peter Walsh, the youngest of the ranch hands, his face white with fear. "Boss, Tom, it is Miguel. He is hurt bad." They found Miguel by the East Creek, his horse standing guard over him. The Mexican horse handler was conscious, but pale blood soaking through his coat from a shoulder wound. Tom and Cole worked together to get him on a horse and back to the ranch house. Catherine took one look at Miguel and immediately began issuing orders. "Get him on the kitchen table. I need hot water, clean cloth whiskey, and the sewing kit from my room. Now." Cole watched her work with quiet amazement. Her hands were steady as she cut away Miguel's bloody shirt, examined the wound, cleaned it with efficiency that spoke of experience. "The bullet passed through," she announced. "That is good. No lead fragments to dig out. But it tore muscle. He will need stitches." "Can you do that?" Cole asked. "I have stitched wounds before. My mother was often the only medical help available on our farm. She taught me." Cole held Miguel's shoulders while Catherine cleaned the wound thoroughly with whiskey, her patient screaming at the burning pain. Then she threaded a needle and began to stitch with careful precision. 12 stitches in the front entry, wound 8 in the back exit. By the time she finished, her hands were shaking, but the job was done. "He needs rest and to be watched for infection," she said, washing blood from her hands. "Someone should sit with him tonight." "I will," Tom volunteered. After Miguel had been moved to the bunkhouse, Cole found Catherine in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee she had not touched. Her hands were still trembling slightly. He sat down across from her. "You saved his life. The doctor could not have done better." "I just did what needed doing. It was more than that. You were calm, focused. I have seen soldiers panic with less provocation." Catherine looked up at him, and he saw tears gathering in her eyes, though she fought to hold them back. "I was terrified the entire time. What if I made it worse? What if he died because of something I did wrong? But you did not let that fear stop you. That is what courage is, Catherine. Not the absence of fear, but the will to act despite it." She nodded, then the tears came despite her efforts. Cole found himself moving around the table without thinking, pulling her up from her chair and into his arms. She stiffened for a moment, then relaxed against him, her face pressed to his chest as she cried. It was the first time he had held her since their brief wedding kiss, and Cole was startled by how natural it felt. How right it felt to have her in his arms to offer comfort and strength. When her tears subsided, Catherine pulled back slightly, looking up at him. "I'm sorry, that was unseemly. It was human. You just stitched a man back together with your bare hands. I think you have earned the right to a few tears." Something passed between them in that moment, some current of understanding that went deeper than words. Catherine's hand was still resting on his chest, and Cole became acutely aware of how close they were standing, how her eyes looked in the lamplight. He stepped back, deliberately breaking the moment before it could develop into something more. "You should rest. It has been a long day." "Yes. Good night, Cole." "Good night." But as Cole lay in his bed that night, he could not stop thinking about how she had felt in his arms and how much he wanted to hold her again. Chapter 9. Shadows and Secrets. The attack on Miguel had shaken the ranch, but it also seemed to galvanize something in Catherine. She threw herself into teaching the boys with renewed intensity, as if education could be a bulwark against chaos. And it worked in its way. Ben and Luke spent their mornings learning letters and numbers, their afternoons practicing reading their minds, occupied with something other than fear. It was on one such afternoon that Ben asked Catherine if she would like to see something special. Luke was napping, exhausted from a morning of particularly energetic lessons. Cole was out checking fence lines with Tom. The house was quiet. "What is it?" Catherine asked, setting aside the book she had been reading. "A place Mama used to go. A place Papa never opens anymore." Ben led her upstairs to a door at the end of the hall that Catherine had never seen opened. The boy turned the handle and the door swung inward to reveal a nursery frozen in time. The room was dim dust motes dancing in the weak winter light that filtered through drawn curtains. 2 cribs stood against one wall draped in white sheets like ghosts. Wooden toys were scattered about: a rocking horse, hand-carved animals, a small wagon. And on the wall hung a portrait of a woman with kind eyes and auburn hair turned to face the corner as if someone could not bear to look at it. "This was going to be the twins' room," Ben said quietly. "Mama made that rocking horse herself, and Papa was building the cribs. But then your mama and the babies died," Catherine finished gently. Ben nodded. He walked to a shelf and picked up a small wooden horse worn smooth by small hands. "She made this for me when I was 4. Said every boy needed a good horse to ride." Catherine felt tears prick her eyes as she watched the boy hold this precious connection to his lost mother. "It is beautiful work. Your mama was very talented. She could make anything: quilts, toys, clothes. She was making a special cradle for the babies, a big one for both of them together." Ben pointed to a half-finished piece of furniture in the corner. "Papa never finished it. I think it hurt too much to look at." "I am sure it did." Ben set down the wooden horse and turned to face Catherine with eyes far too old for his 8 years. Do you think she is angry, my mama, that you are here now? The question pierced Catherine's heart. Oh, Ben, I think if your mama is in heaven watching over you, she wants you and Luke to be happy. She wants someone to love and care for you. But what if she thinks you are trying to replace her? Catherine knelt down so she was eye level with the boy. I am not trying to replace your mama, sweetheart. No one could ever do that. Your mama will always be your mama, the woman who gave you life, who loved you first. But maybe there is room in your heart for both of us, for the memory of her and for me standing here with you now. Ben studied her face for a long moment, weighing her words. Then in a voice barely above a whisper, I do not want to forget her. You will not forget. I will make sure of that. Tell me about her, Ben. Tell me everything you remember, and I will help you keep those memories alive. And so Ben talked. He told Catherine about his mother's singing voice, how she would hum Irish lullabies while she worked. He told her about the way she made butter cookies every Saturday, letting him help press shapes into the dough. He told her about the stories she invented, tales of brave knights and clever princesses that never came from any book. As he talked, Catherine carefully turned the portrait on the wall to face the room again. The woman looking back at her from the painting had a kind face, laugh lines around her eyes, and work-worn hands folded gently in her lap. Beth Blackwood had been beautiful in an earthy, practical way. She looks like someone who gave very good hugs, Catherine observed. She did. Ben's voice was thick with emotion. She smelled like bread and lavender, and she always had time to listen. Ben, can I tell you something about my own mother? The boy nodded. She died when I was 15. Pneumonia took her in the space of 3 days. And I was so angry. Angry at her for leaving, angry at God for taking her, angry at myself for not being able to save her. I tried to forget the pain by forgetting her. I stopped talking about her, stopped thinking about her. And you know what happened? What? I lost her twice. Once when she died, and again when I tried to forget. Don't make my mistake, Ben. Hold on to your memories of your mama. Talk about her. Cry when you need to. Laugh when you remember the good times. That is how you keep her alive in your heart. Ben looked at her with something like revelation dawning in his eyes. Then for the first time since Catherine had met him, he smiled. Not a small, careful smile, but a real one that transformed his serious little face. Will you help me? Help me remember her properly. Of course I will, and you can help me be a good mama to you and Luke. We will figure this out together. Ben threw his arms around her waist, and Catherine held him close, this brave boy who had lost so much and was trying so hard to be strong. Over his head, she looked at Beth's portrait and made a silent promise. I will take care of them. All of them. I will do my best to fill the space you left. When they finally left the nursery, Ben turned back at the door. Can we leave the portrait facing out? I think Mama would want to see the light. I think that is a wonderful idea. That evening, after the boys were in bed, Catherine found Cole in his study going over ledgers. She knocked softly on the doorframe. May I come in? Cole looked up surprised. She rarely sought him out in his private space. Of course, Catherine entered and sat in the chair across from his desk. Ben showed me the nursery today. Cole's face went still. Did he? He told me about Beth, about the twins, about how much he misses them all. I see. Cole, he is carrying so much pain. He blames himself in some childish way for their deaths. He thinks if he had been better behaved somehow, it would have changed things. Cole closed the ledger with a snap. That is ridiculous. He was 5 years old. Grief is not logical. You should know that better than anyone. The barb hit home and Cole flinched. What do you want me to do, Catherine? I cannot bring his mother back. I cannot fix what is broken. No, but you can talk to him. Share your own grief. Let him see that it is acceptable to hurt, to remember to mourn. Right now, he thinks he has to be strong for Luke, strong for you. He is 8 years old and carrying the weight of this family on his shoulders. Cole was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. I do not know how to talk about Beth. Every time I try, I see her dying. I hear her screaming. I remember holding her as the life drained out of her and knowing I could do nothing to stop it. Catherine leaned forward. Then tell Ben that. Tell him that grief is hard for you too, that you struggle with it every day. Let him see your humanity, Cole. He needs to know his father is not made of stone. If I let myself feel it all, Catherine, I am afraid I will drown in it. Then maybe you need someone to help keep you afloat. You do not have to do this alone anymore. Their eyes met across the desk, and Cole saw compassion in her gaze. Not pity, which he would have rejected, but understanding. This woman had lost her own mother, her own family, her own dreams of a different life. She knew about grief and survival. Will you be there, he asked. When I talk to Ben, I do not think I can do it alone. Of course, we are partners in this, remember, for better or worse. Thank you. Catherine stood to leave, but paused at the door. Cole, Ben also said something else. Something I think you should know. What? He said his mother used to cry sometimes when she thought no one was listening. He said she talked about being lonely, about wanting to go back to Denver. He thinks she loved you and him and Luke, but that she was also torn between the life she had and the life she imagined she might have had. Yet Cole felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath him. He heard that children hear everything, and they understand more than we think they do. After Catherine left, Cole sat in the silence of his study and let the implications wash over him. Beth had been unhappy. She had cried when she thought no one was listening. She had been lonely. All the things his father had hinted at now, confirmed by his own son. Cole pulled open the bottom drawer of his desk, where he kept the letters his father had left for him after Beth's death. Old Jack had found them hidden in Beth's sewing basket, draft letters Beth had written but never sent. Cole had not read them, all could not bring himself to after the first few lines. But now he forced himself to pull them out and read every word. Letter after letter addressed to William Hartley in Denver, never mailed. Beth pouring out her heart to a man who was not her husband in words she never had the courage to send. Talking about the life she might have had, the dreams she had given up, the loneliness of the ranch. But also talking about her love for her sons, her respect for Cole even if she did not love him with passion, her determination to make the best of the choice she had made. They were the letters of a complex woman torn between duty and desire, reality and dreams. Not a saint, not a villain, just human. Cole sat there until late into the night, reading and rereading those letters, letting his perfect memory of Beth shatter and reform into something more complicated, but also more real. And when he finally went to bed exhausted and emotionally raw, he realized that Catherine had given him a gift. The gift of seeing Beth as she truly was, flawed and struggling and human. Which somehow made Cole's failure to save her feel less like a unique moral failing and more like a simple tragedy. Maybe he thought as sleep finally claimed him. Maybe Catherine was saving him in ways he had not even realized he needed saving. Chapter 10. Fire in the darkness. The attack came on a moonless night 2 weeks before Christmas. Cole woke to the sound of the signal bell clanging frantically, the alarm they had set up for just this eventuality. He was out of bed instantly, grabbing his Winchester and a box of ammunition. He met Tom Fletcher in the hallway, the foreman already armed and moving fast. North sector. Looks like a dozen or more men, maybe more. They are trying to set fire to the main barn. Wake everyone, full defensive positions. Execute the plan exactly as we practiced. Tom nodded and disappeared. Cole moved quickly to Catherine's room and knocked hard. Catherine, we are under attack. Get the boys to the root cellar now. Her door opened immediately. She was already dressed, having apparently slept in her clothes. I am ready. Where do you need me? Root cellar with the boys. Lock it from inside and do not come out until you hear my voice or Tom's calling. The all clear. Cole, I can help fight. I need you to protect my sons. That is the most important job right now. Please, Catherine. She searched his face for a moment, then nodded. Be careful. Always am. Cole watched her disappear into the boys' room. Then he moved to the gun cabinet and began distributing weapons. Old Jack appeared, moving slowly, but with his old cavalry carbine in his hands. Just like Shiloh, the old man said with a grim smile. Except my knees were better then. Second floor windows facing north and west. You see anyone who is not one of ours, you shoot. With pleasure, son. Cole positioned his defenders according to the plan they had practiced. Miguel recovered enough from his shoulder wound to shoot, took the barn loft with a clear field of fire. 2 ranch hands covered the east approach from the bunkhouse. Old Jack had the house second floor, and Cole himself moved between positions, coordinating the defense. The attackers had learned from their previous hit-and-run tactics. This time they came in force, at least 15 men that Cole could count, moving with discipline that suggested military training. They advanced in teams, providing covering fire for each other as they tried to get close enough to the barn and bar to set it ablaze. "Fire at will," Cole shouted. "Aim for center mass." The ranch erupted in gunfire. From his position behind a water trough, Cole worked his Winchester with mechanical precision. Aim, fire, lever, aim, fire. He saw one attacker go down, clutching his leg. Another fell backwards and did not get up. But they kept coming. Someone hurled a torch toward the barn. It fell short, sputtering out in the snow. Another torch flew through the air, this one landing on the barn roof. Miguel, from his position in the loft, threw a bucket of water on it before it could catch. "They are trying the east side," Tom shouted. Cole ran to that position, arriving just in time to see three men cutting through the fence. He dropped to one knee, steadied his aim, and fired 3 times in rapid succession. 2 of the men went down. The third ran back into the darkness. From the house, he heard the boom of old Jack's carbine. The old man might be slow on his feet, but his aim was still deadly. For 20 minutes, the battle raged. Attackers tried repeatedly to reach the barn or the house. Each time they were driven back by accurate fire from the defenders. Cole used his military training to good effect, shifting his men to counter each assault, never leaving a gap in the defenses. Then he heard breaking glass from the house. Fear shot through him like electricity. Catherine and the boys were in there. He ran toward the house, his heart pounding. As he burst through the back door, he heard a woman's voice from the front hallway. "Stop right there. Do not take another step." Catherine's voice steady but with steel underneath. Cole moved quickly but quietly through the kitchen. In the front hallway, he saw Catherine standing with the Winchester he had taught her to use. She was aiming it at a man who had climbed through the broken window and was now frozen in place. "I said stop," Catherine repeated. "The next step you take will be your last." The man laughed, though there was nervousness in it. "You are not going to shoot me, lady. School teachers do not shoot people." "This school teacher does. Last warning." The man took a step forward. Catherine fired. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. The man went down with a scream, clutching his thigh where Catherine's bullet had struck. She worked the lever action, immediately chambering another round and keeping the rifle trained on the man. Her hands were shaking. Cole could see, but her aim never wavered. Another attacker appeared at the window. Before he could climb through, Cole fired from behind Catherine. The man dropped. "Catherine, take the boys and go to the cellar now." "There is another one." He went toward the study. Cole moved past her checking rooms quickly. He found the third intruder trying to force open the lock on his gun cabinet. The man turned, reaching for his pistol. Cole did not give him the chance. He fired once and the man crumpled. From outside, the gunfire was tapering off. The attackers were retreating, having failed to accomplish their objective. Cole heard Tom shouting the all clear. He turned back to the hallway. Catherine was still standing over the man she had shot, the rifle still pointed at him, even though he was clearly not going anywhere. "Catherine, it is over." She did not lower the rifle. Cole walked over and gently put his hand on the barrel, pushing it down. "It is over. You can put it down now." Only then did Catherine seem to come back to herself. She looked at the rifle in her hands as if seeing it for the first time, then at the man bleeding on her floor. Her face went white. "I shot him. I actually shot him." "You did. You saved your life, and probably the boys' lives too." Catherine's hands began to shake violently. Cole took the rifle from her before she could drop it. Then, without thinking about propriety or distance or their careful arrangement, he pulled her into his arms. She was rigid at first shock, holding her in its grip. Then she collapsed against him, her whole body trembling. "I could have killed him," she whispered. "I aimed for his leg, but what if I had missed? What if?" "You did not miss. You did exactly what I taught you. You defended our home." "Our home?" Catherine pulled back slightly to look up at him. "Did you really just say that?" "Yes, this is our home, Catherine. Ours, not mine, not yours, ours. And you fought for it like a warrior. I have known soldiers who would have run. You stood your ground." Something shifted in her eyes, some barrier that had been between them crumbling away. "I was so scared." "So was I, but we did it. We held them off." They stood there in the hallway, holding each other, while around them, men began securing the prisoners and assessing damage. Old Jack came down the stairs, took one look at Cole and Catherine, and smiled before turning away to give them privacy. It was Tom who finally interrupted. "Boss, we got 4 of them alive, 2 wounded, including the one Mrs. Blackwood shot. The rest ran. We had no casualties on our side, though Pedro caught a graze on his arm." Cole reluctantly released Catherine. "Tie up the prisoners. I want to question them." The man Catherine had shot was bound and dragged into the kitchen. Cole looked down at him with cold fury. "Who sent you?" "Go to hell." Cole crouched down, putting his face close to the man's. "You tried to burn my barn. You could have killed my family. I have no patience for games. Who is paying you?" "Some fellow out of Denver. Harrington, I think his name was. Paid us $200 each to scare you off. Said if we killed someone, it was worth 500. Harrington. Cole stood up, his suspicions confirmed. "How many of you in total?" 15 when we started. Maybe 10 still standing after tonight." Cole looked at Tom. "Send word to Marshal Brady. Tell him we have prisoners and a confession about Harrington." After the prisoners had been secured and the damage assessed, Cole found Catherine in the kitchen, scrubbing blood from the floor with vicious intensity. Her hands were red from the hot water and harsh soap. "Catherine." She did not look up. "I cannot get it out. I have tried 3 different things and it is still there." "Catherine, stop." Cole pulled her up from the floor and pried the brush from her hands. "It is just a stain. It will come out eventually. Right now you need to rest." "I do not think I can rest. Every time I close my eyes, I see that man. I see myself pulling the trigger. I hear the sound it made when the bullet hit him." Cole led her to a chair and poured whiskey into a cup. "Drink this. It will help." She obeyed, mechanically coughing as the liquor burned down her throat. Cole sat down across from her. "I am going to tell you what my commanding officer told me the first time I shot a man in combat. He said I could live with the guilt of shooting a bad man, or I could live with the guilt of letting my comrades die. Either way, there would be guilt, but only one choice kept people alive. It does not make it easier. No, but it makes it necessary, and that matters." They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Catherine asked the question that had been haunting Cole since his conversation with Ben. "Tell me about Beth. Really tell me. Not the perfect version, but who she actually was." And so Cole told her. He told her about the letters to William Hartley. He told her about Beth's unhappiness, her loneliness, her dreams of a different life. He told her about his own guilt, the choices he made that he could never unmake. Catherine listened without interrupting. When he finished, she reached across the table and took his hand. She was human, Cole, torn between 2 lives, 2 versions of herself. That does not make her a bad person. It makes her real. I know that now, but for so long held on to this image of her as perfect, as if making her a saint somehow made my failure to save her less terrible. You did not fail her. Life failed her. Medicine failed her. You loved her the best you knew how, and sometimes that is all anyone can do." Cole looked at their joined hands, then up at Catherine's face. "When did you become so wise?" "I am not wise. I am just someone who has also lost people and learned that guilt is a heavy burden that changes nothing. Beth made her choices. You made yours. The twins died because of complications we cannot control or understand. And now you have a second chance. We have a second chance. Do we? I think so, if we are brave enough to take it." Cole stood, pulling Catherine up with him. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Then slowly, deliberately, Cole leaned down and kissed her. Not the brief, formal kiss of their wedding, but something deeper. A promise of possibility. When they finally broke apart, Catherine smiled. "That was not very businesslike, Mr. Blackwood." "No, it was not. And I find I do not care about the arrangement anymore, Mrs. Blackwood. I find I want something more." "So do I." They went upstairs together, walking past the nursery where Beth's portrait now faced the room, past the boys' bedroom where Ben and Luke slept peacefully, unaware of how close danger had come. And when they reached the hallway between their 2 rooms, they paused. "Your room or mine?" Catherine asked with a slight smile. "Ours," Cole said, opening the door to what had been Beth's room, what was now Catherine's room. If you are willing, I am willing. And so the practical arrangement became something more, something built on respect and partnership and growing affection, something that, given time and care, might even become love. But outside in the darkness, a man rode hard toward Bitterroot with a message for Marcus Harrington. The attack had failed. Cole Blackwood and his new wife were stronger than expected. The war for the ranch had just entered a new phase, and the final battle was yet to come. The night after the attack, Cole called a war council in his study. The room was crowded with men who smelled of gunpowder and sweat, men who had just fought to defend their home. Old Jack sat in the corner chair, his carbine still within easy reach. Tom Fletcher stood by the window, watching the darkness as if expecting another assault. Miguel Santos was there despite his injured shoulder, and Catherine sat at Cole's side, her presence now accepted without question. On the desk lay a map of the ranch financial ledgers and the confession they had extracted from the captured attackers. Cole studied these documents with the cold calculation of a general planning a campaign. "We need to face facts," he said, his voice cutting through the low murmur of conversation. "We won tonight's battle, but we are losing the war. Harrington is bleeding us financially. Even if we hold off his men, we cannot hold off the bank." "How much time do we have?" Catherine asked. Cole checked the calendar on his desk. 10 days until December 31st. "We owe $3,500. We have $450 in cash. Our cattle are worth perhaps $5,000, but there are no buyers in winter. If we cannot pay, the bank forecloses and Harrington gets the land for a fraction of its value. And then we make him regret wanting it so bad," Old Jack said, his voice harsh. "Burn the whole damn place down before we let him have it." "No," Catherine said firmly. Everyone turned to look at her. "We do not destroy what 3 generations built just to spite one man. There has to be another way." Cole felt a surge of pride at her words. She understood what this land meant, not just to him, but to his family's legacy. "What if we went around Harrington?" Catherine continued, leaning forward. "He wants this land because the railroad is coming through. But what if we dealt directly with the railroad company? They need a right-of-way through the valley. We could sell them an easement, a narrow corridor of land for their tracks. We keep the ranch, they get what they need, and Harrington gets nothing." The room fell silent as the men processed this idea. It was Tom who spoke first. "That is brilliant. The railroad does not care about the whole ranch. They just need maybe 100 feet wide by 2 miles long. We could sell that for enough to pay the debt and still keep 99% of our land." "But the railroad headquarters is in St. Paul, Minnesota," Miguel pointed out. "How do we reach them in 10 days? Cole was already calculating. "Telegraph to their office tomorrow. Request an immediate meeting. If I take the train, I can be there in 3 days. 2 days to negotiate, 3 days back. That leaves 2 days margin for problems." "You cannot leave the ranch undefended," Tom objected. "Harrington will attack the moment he knows you are gone." "Then we do not let him know," Old Jack said. "Cole leaves before dawn, quiet-like. Far as anyone in town knows, he is holed up here preparing for another fight." "I can manage the ranch," Catherine said. When the men looked skeptical, she straightened in her chair. "I have been watching how things work for weeks now. Tom knows the cattle and can handle the men. Miguel can manage the horses. I can keep the household running and make decisions if needed." Cole studied his wife across the desk. 5 weeks ago, she had been a desperate woman with nothing. Now she was offering to run a 3,000-acre ranch while he was gone. The transformation was remarkable. "It is a risk," he said. "Everything is a risk. But this is our best chance." Cole made his decision. "All right, Tom, you are in charge of defense while I am gone. Set up rotating patrols, but make it look like normal ranch work. Do not give Harrington any indication that I have left. Catherine, you manage the household and make any decisions that cannot wait. Miguel, keep the horses ready in case anyone needs to ride for help." "And me?" Old Jack asked. "You stay close to Catherine and the boys. If trouble comes, your experience could save lives." They spent the next hour working out details, contingency plans, communication signals. By the time the meeting broke up, Cole felt the familiar clarity of purpose that had sustained him through his military years. They had a plan. It might fail, but at least they were taking action rather than passively waiting for disaster. After the others had left, Catherine remained. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the snow-covered valley that glowed silver under the stars. "Are you really comfortable with this?" Cole asked, coming to stand beside her. "It is asking a lot of you. You trusted me with a rifle during the attack. Why not trust me with the ranch for a week? Because if I fail in St. Paul, everything falls apart. The pressure on you would be immense." Catherine turned to face him. "Cole, when I married you, I became part of this family. That means I share the burdens as well as the benefits. You have been carrying this alone for too long. Let me help shoulder the weight." Cole pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. "How did I get so lucky to find you? You were desperate and I was freezing. Not exactly a fairy tale romance. No, it is better than that. It is real." They stood together in the quiet study, drawing strength from each other. Outside, the Montana winter held the land in its grip. Inside, something warmer was growing. Something that felt very much like love. Chapter 12, A Father's Lesson. Cole woke Ben before dawn the next morning. The boy was confused and sleepy as his father dressed him in warm clothes and led him down to the kitchen where Catherine had hot coffee and biscuits waiting. "Papa, where are we going?" Ben asked, yawning. "On a journey, son. An important one. You and I are going to St. Paul, Minnesota to save the ranch." That woke Ben up completely. "Really, just us?" "Just us. It is time you learned what it means to fight for your legacy." Luke appeared in the kitchen doorway, rubbing his eyes. "Why does Ben get to go and not me?" Catherine scooped up the younger boy. "Because you have an important job here. You need to help me take care of the ranch while your papa and brother are gone. Can you do that?" Luke nodded seriously. "I will be the man of the house." "That is right, I am counting on you." Cole kissed Luke goodbye, then embraced Catherine. "If Harrington makes a move, I will handle it. You focus on the railroad. We will be fine." The train station in Bitterroot was deserted at this early hour. Cole and Ben boarded the eastbound train just as the sun was beginning to paint the horizon pink and gold. As the train pulled away from the station, Ben pressed his face to the window, watching his home disappear into the distance. "Are we going to come back?" the boy asked quietly. "Of course we are. Why would you ask that?" "Because Mama left and never came back." The simple statement hit Cole like a punch. He put his arm around his son's shoulders. "Ben, your mama did not choose to leave. She fought to stay with you with all of us. Sometimes death takes people before we are ready to let them go. But I promise you I am coming back. We are both coming back, and we are going to save our home." As the train rolled across the snowy plains, Cole began to teach his son the lessons he wished someone had taught him at that age. He explained about the ranch not just as property, but as legacy. "Your great-grandfather fought Comanche warriors for that land," Cole told Ben, "took an arrow through his shoulder and kept fighting because he knew that land would feed his family for generations. Your grandfather served in the Civil War, came home with a bullet still in his back that doctors could not remove. He worked that ranch in constant pain because he understood it was bigger than himself. Now it is my turn to fight for it, and someday it will be yours." "What if I do not want to be a rancher?" Ben asked. The question surprised Cole. "What do you want to be?" "I am not sure yet, but Mama Kate says I am good with numbers. Maybe I could be an accountant or a banker." "Your new mama is right. You are very good with numbers." Cole thought carefully about his next words. "Ben, the legacy I am talking about is not just about raising cattle. It is about responsibility, about protecting what previous generations built, about making sacrifices for people who come after you. You could be a banker and still honor that legacy by making wise decisions, by taking care of your family, by building something worth passing on. Like you marrying Mama Kate. Exactly like that. I needed help. She needed help, so we made a difficult choice that benefited everyone. That is what men do, son. They make hard choices to protect their families." The train rattled on through the morning. Ben asked endless questions, and Cole answered each one honestly. They talked about business, about contracts, about negotiation and compromise. Cole showed Ben the papers he had prepared for the railroad company, explaining each clause and provision. "Why are you telling me all this?" Ben asked. "I am only 8. Because I want you to understand. Your grandfather started teaching me about the ranch when I was 7. He said a man is never too young to learn responsibility. And besides," Cole paused, choosing his words carefully, "if something happens to me, I need to know you understand enough to help Mama Kate make the right decisions. Nothing is going to happen to you. Probably not, but we prepare for the worst and hope for the best. That is what men do. That night, they stayed in a simple hotel in Omaha. After Ben was asleep, Cole sat by the window looking out at the unfamiliar city and thinking about Catherine back at the ranch. Was she safe? Was Harrington making his move? He had to trust that she could handle whatever came. He had no choice. The next day brought more travel and more lessons. Cole taught Ben about reading people, about understanding motivations and finding common ground. He taught him that business was not about winning, but about finding solutions that benefited everyone involved. The railroad wants land for their tracks, Cole explained. We want money to keep our ranch. If we can give them what they want while getting what we need, nobody loses. That is the best kind of deal. On the third day they arrived in St. Paul. The city was bigger than anything Ben had ever seen, with buildings that towered 3 and 4 stories high and streets crowded with wagons and people. Cole could see his son's eyes widen with wonder, but he kept the boy focused. Remember why we are here. Stay alert, be polite, and watch how business is conducted. The Northern Pacific Railroad headquarters was an imposing brick building downtown. Cole and Ben were shown into a conference room where 3 executives waited. The men looked skeptical when they saw Cole had brought a child to a business meeting. Gentlemen, Cole said, shaking hands firmly, this is my son Benjamin. He is learning the family business. I hope you do not mind his presence. Not at all, said the senior executive, a white-haired man named Roberts. Though I must say this is unusual. Your telegram mentioned a right-of-way proposal. Cole laid out his maps and documents explaining exactly what he was offering. A corridor 100 feet wide running 2 miles through the Blackwood Ranch, giving the railroad direct access through Bitterroot Valley. The price $5,000 payable immediately. The railroad men studied the maps. Roberts frowned. We were under the impression that this land was already spoken for. A man named Harrington indicated he would soon own it and was offering us a right-of-way for $8,000. Cole felt ice in his veins but kept his expression neutral. Mr. Harrington does not own the land. I do, and I am offering you the same access for $3,000, less available immediately. Mr. Harrington's offer depends on him acquiring property he does not currently possess. The executives exchanged glances. One of them, a younger man named Patterson, spoke up. Why should we trust your offer over his? He has substantial backing from investors in Denver. It was Ben who answered, his young voice clear in the quiet room. Because we own the land now. A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. That is what my papa always says. The men smiled at that. Roberts looked at Cole with new respect. Your son makes a good point, but $5,000 is a significant sum. We would need guarantees. For the next 2 hours they negotiated. Cole gave ground on some points, held firm on others. He agreed to longer terms for the railroad's access to limitations on how he could use the adjacent land, to provisions protecting the railroad's investment. In return, he got his price and immediate payment. When they finally shook hands on the deal, Roberts said, You are a shrewd negotiator, Mr. Blackwood, and your son has a good head for business. He will make a fine rancher someday. Or a fine banker, Ben said seriously, making the men laugh. Walking out of that building with a bank draft for $5,000 in his pocket, Cole felt lighter than he had in months. They had done it. The ranch was saved. That night in their hotel room, Ben asked the question Cole had been expecting. Papa, did you really fall in love with Mama Kate, or did you just marry her because you needed help? Cole sat on the edge of his son's bed. Honestly, at first I married her because I needed help, but somewhere along the way I did fall in love with her. Not the same way I loved your first mama. Different, but just as real. Is it okay to love 2 people, even if one of them is dead? Yes, son, your heart is bigger than you think. You can love your first mama's memory and love your new mama at the same time. They do not cancel each other out. They just make your life richer. Ben thought about that for a moment. I think I love Mama Kate too. She is kind to us, and she is brave. She shot that man to protect us. She is very brave. We are lucky to have her. Papa, when we get home, can we tell her that we love her? I think that would make her very happy. They took the train home the next morning, arriving in Bitterroot on the afternoon of December 29th. Cole had been gone 6 days. That left 1 day before the debt came due. As the train pulled into the station, Cole saw Tom Fletcher waiting on the platform. His foreman's face was grim. Boss, we got problems. Chapter 13, The Fortress Holds. While Cole and Ben were traveling to St. Paul, Catherine discovered that managing a ranch under siege was far more challenging than she had anticipated. The first 2 days passed quietly, almost too quietly. Tom ran the patrols, Miguel kept the horses ready, and Catherine maintained the household routine. But on the third day Marcus Harrington arrived at the ranch, Catherine was in the kitchen when she heard the horses. Through the window she saw Harrington approaching with 8 men all armed. Her heart hammered, but she forced herself to remain calm. She wiped her hands on her apron, checked that the small pistol Cole had given her was in her pocket, and walked out onto the porch. Old Jack appeared at her elbow, moving quietly despite his limp. Steady, girl. Do not let them see fear. Tom and Miguel were already positioning themselves strategically, rifles visible but not pointed. The ranch hands emerged from the barn, making their presence known. Harrington reined in his horse 20 feet from the porch. He was dressed like a city gentleman, expensive suit and hat, looking completely out of place on a working ranch. Mrs. Blackwood, he called out, where's your husband? Working. I can help you with whatever you need. I need to speak with Cole about a business matter. When will he return? Catherine recognized the fishing expedition for what it was. Harrington wanted to know if Cole was here. My husband does not share his schedule with me. Was there something specific you needed? Harrington's smile did not reach his eyes. I came to collect on the debt your husband owes. I now hold the note from the bank. $3,500 due in 3 days. Catherine felt her stomach drop, but kept her expression neutral. The debt is not due until December 31st. Today is the 26th. You are early. Actually, if you read the contract carefully, you will see that the creditor can demand early payment if the property is deemed at risk. Given the recent violence at this ranch, I deem it very much at risk. It was a legal trap, and Catherine had no idea if he was bluffing or telling the truth. I would need to see the contract and consult with our lawyer. You have 24 hours. Tomorrow at this time, I return with the sheriff and a foreclosure notice. If you cannot pay, this ranch becomes mine. We will see about that. Harrington tipped his hat mockingly and rode away with his men. Catherine stood on the porch until they were out of sight, then her knees went weak. Old Jack caught her arm. Easy now, you did good. Kept your spine straight. He can do this, can he not? Force early payment. Maybe, maybe not, but we cannot reach Cole to find out, and we do not have the money either way. Catherine's mind raced. They were trapped. Cole was unreachable somewhere between here and St. Paul. They had no lawyer in town who was not already in Harrington's pocket, and they had less than $2,000 in available funds. That night, she barely slept. She kept going over options in her mind, each one more desperate than the last. Sell the cattle at panic prices. There were no buyers. Borrow from neighbors. Nobody had that kind of cash. Abandon the ranch and run unthinkable. As dawn broke, Catherine made a decision. If they could not fight Harrington legally, they would fight him with his own weapons. She called Tom and old Jack to the kitchen. I need to get into Harrington's office, tonight. Tom stared at her. Ma'am, that is breaking and entering. I know what it is, but I also know that Harrington keeps records of everything. If he has been paying men to attack this ranch, there will be evidence. A ledger receipts something. If we can prove he is behind the attacks, we can have him arrested. And then his claim on the debt becomes invalid. That is a mighty big if, old Jack said, and awful dangerous. Do you have a better idea? The two men exchanged glances. Finally, Tom nodded. I will go with you. Miguel can watch the ranch. No, you are too recognizable. If we are caught, it cannot be traced back to the ranch. I will take Miguel. He can pick locks. Absolutely not. Tom started, but Catherine cut him off. This is not a discussion. It is happening. The only question is whether you help me plan it properly or I do it alone and make mistakes. Old Jack chuckled. She sounds like your wife now, Tom. All stubborn determination. Cole picked well. They spent the day planning. Harrington's office was above the saloon, accessible by an outside staircase. The saloon would be busy in the evening, providing cover noise. The lock on the office door was simple, according to Miguel, who had seen it before. As darkness fell, Catherine changed into dark clothes and tried to calm her racing heart. This was insane. She was a school teacher, not a criminal, but desperate times required desperate measures. She and Miguel rode into town separately, meeting behind the general store. The streets were relatively quiet, most people inside escaping the cold. They moved through shadows to the saloon, then up the outside stairs. Miguel worked on the lock while Catherine kept watch. The sound of piano music and laughter drifted up from the saloon below, covering the small clicks and scrapes of Miguel's work. The lock opened. Inside, Harrington's office was neat and orderly. A large desk dominated the room with file cabinets along one wall. Catherine lit a small lamp, keeping it low, and began searching. The desk drawers held correspondence maps of the Valley documents about railroad routes, but no financial records. Those would be in the safe, Catherine realized. She found it behind a painting on the wall, exactly as old Jack had predicted. "Can you open it?" she whispered to Miguel. "I can try." While Miguel worked on the safe, Catherine continued searching the desk. She found a stack of letters in the bottom drawer, all from Beth, addressed to William Hartley in Denver. Her hands trembled as she opened one. These were the actual letters Beth had sent over the years, the ones William had kept. It was from Beth, a love letter filled with longing and regret. Catherine felt sick reading it, this intimate glimpse into Beth's unhappiness. But she kept reading, needing to understand. Beth had loved William, but she had chosen Cole for practical reasons, for security. And then she had spent years torn between duty and desire, trying to be a good wife while mourning the life she might have had. These letters, the ones she actually mailed, were more raw, more honest than anything she had left behind at the ranch. Catherine was so absorbed in the letters that she almost missed Miguel's whispered, "Got it." The safe door swung open. Inside were stacks of cash, legal documents, and a leather-bound ledger. Catherine grabbed the ledger and began flipping through pages. There, December 1st. Paid Dutch $200 for harassment of Blackwood Ranch. December 8th. Paid gang $1,500 for night raid. December 15th. Bribed Judge Morrison $500 for release of Dutch. It was all here. Every payment, every crime, documented in Harrington's own hand. He had been meticulous in his record-keeping, never imagining someone would break in to find it. Catherine was about to close the safe when she heard footsteps on the outside stairs. Miguel grabbed her arm. "Someone is coming." They ducked behind a filing cabinet just as the door opened. Harrington entered carrying a lantern. He walked to his desk, set down the lantern, and began sorting through papers. Catherine held her breath, the ledger pressed against her chest. They were trapped. If Harrington looked behind the filing cabinet, they were finished. The railroad man worked for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Then he gathered his papers and turned to leave. But he paused at the door, looking back at the room as if sensing something amiss. His eyes traveled over the office, then fixed on the safe. He walked over to it, examining it closely. Had they left it exactly as they found it, Catherine could not remember. Harrington reached for the safe door. If he checked and found the ledger missing, he would know immediately. Miguel, acting on impulse, kicked the filing cabinet. It made a loud bang against the wall. Harrington spun toward the sound, and Miguel threw open the window and jumped out, hitting the ground below with a thud. Harrington rushed to the window, shouting, "Thief! Someone is robbing my office." In the confusion, Catherine slipped out the door and down the stairs. She could hear Harrington behind her, could hear men emerging from the saloon. But she ran through the dark streets like her life depended on it, because it probably did. She made it to where she had tied her horse and rode hard out of town. Behind her, she could hear shouts and pursuing horses, but she had a head start and knew the terrain. By the time she reached the ranch, she had lost her pursuers in the darkness. Tom was waiting anxiously. "Did you get it?" Catherine held up the ledger, gasping for breath. "Every crime he committed, all the evidence we need. Miguel. He got away. He should be here soon." Sure enough, Miguel appeared 20 minutes later, limping but grinning. "That was exciting, boss lady. We should be criminals more often." "Never again," Catherine said firmly, though she could not help but smile. The next morning, Catherine took the ledger to Marshal Brady's office. The lawman read through it with widening eyes. This is enough to arrest Harrington on multiple charges: conspiracy, bribery, attempted murder." "Then arrest him." "I will. Right now. Thank you, Mrs. Blackwood. You may have just saved your ranch." Catherine watched as the marshal and his deputies rode toward town. She felt exhausted but triumphant. They had fought back, and they had won. But the victory was short-lived. That afternoon, the marshal returned with grim news. Harrington is in custody, but before I arrested him, he had already sold your debt to another party, a bank consortium in Denver, and they are demanding immediate payment. The debt is still due tomorrow, and you still do not have the money. Catherine felt the world tilt around her. They had defeated Harrington, but the financial noose was still tightening. Where was Cole? Did he succeed in St. Etienne? Paul, or had this all been for nothing? Chapter 14, the 11th hour. Cole listened to Tom's report with growing alarm. Harrington arrested. The debt sold to a Denver consortium. Catherine's daring raid to get evidence. His wife had risked everything while he was gone. Where is she now? Cole demanded. At the ranch with the boys. She was exhausted. Boss, she was incredible. Steady as a rock through the whole thing. Cole and Ben climbed into the wagon for the ride home. The sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of orange and gold. One more day until the debt came due and he had the money to pay it. As they approached the ranch, Cole saw Catherine on the porch. When she spotted the wagon, she ran down the steps, her skirts flying. Cole jumped down and she threw herself into his arms. Thank God you are back. I was so worried. I am here, and I brought something. He pulled the bank draft from his pocket. $5,000. The railroad bought a right-of-way through our land. Catherine's eyes widened. You did it. You actually did it. We did it. You held the ranch. I closed the deal. Together. They held each other while Ben watched with a satisfied smile. This was how his parents should be, he thought. Together, strong, united. That night, after the boys were in bed, Cole and Catherine sat together in the study. She told him everything about the raid on Harrington's office, about finding the ledger, about the narrow escape. You could have been killed, Cole said, his voice rough with emotion. So could you have many times. We do what we must for this family. Catherine, there is something you should see. Cole pulled out 2 stacks of letters. These are the draft letters my father found in Beth's sewing basket, the ones she wrote but never sent. And these, he gestured to the letters Catherine had brought back, are the ones she actually mailed to William, the ones you found in Harrington's office. I want to read them all with you, all of them. No more secrets between us. They spent hours going through Beth's correspondence to William Hartley. The letters painted a picture of a woman torn between 2 worlds, loving her children, but regretting her choices, trying to be a good wife while dreaming of a different life. When they finished the last letter, Catherine said quietly, she was so conflicted. I feel sorry for her. So do I. For years I made her into a saint in my mind. But she was just human, complicated and struggling and doing her best. Cole took Catherine's hands. I think I needed to see this, to understand that even the best marriages have shadows and doubts. It makes what we have feel more real. What do we have, Cole? He pulled her close. I think we have love. Not the passionate, consuming kind I had with Beth, but something steadier, built on respect and partnership and choosing each other every day. Is that enough for you? It is more than enough. It is everything. They kissed a long, slow kiss that held promises for the future. When they finally broke apart, Cole said, I want you to move into my room. Really be my wife in every sense, if you are ready. I am ready. I have been ready since the night of the attack when I realized how much you mean to me. The next morning, December 31st, Cole rode into Bitterroot with the bank draft. He walked into the bank and paid off the debt in full with enough left over to fund ranch operations through the spring. The ranch was saved. When he returned home, he found Catherine and the boys decorating the house for a New Year's celebration. Luke ran to greet him, and Ben followed more sedately, but with a smile on his face. Is it over, Papa? Are we safe now? It is over, son. We are safe. That evening, as the new year approached, the Blackwood family gathered around the fireplace. Old Jack sat in his favorite chair, Tom and the ranch hands crowded into the room, and Catherine stood beside Cole with Ben and Luke between them. I want to make a toast, Cole said, raising his glass, to family, to fighting for what matters, to second chances and new beginnings, and to the strongest woman I know who saved this ranch as much as I did. To Catherine, everyone chorused. After the others had drifted away to celebrate in their own fashion, Cole found Catherine alone on the porch looking up at the stars. What are you thinking about? He asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. About nothing. No home, no family, no future. And now I have all of that. It seems almost too good to be true. It is real, Catherine. This is your home now. These are your sons. I am your husband for better or worse. She turned in his arms to face him. I have something to tell you. Something I have suspected for a few weeks, but was not sure until today. What is it? I am with child Cole. We are going to have a baby. For a moment, Cole could not speak. Then joy flooded through him, pure and bright. A baby. Our baby. Are you happy? I know this complicates things. Happy, Catherine. I am beyond happy. This is, this is a gift. A new beginning for both of us. He kissed her, then pouring everything he felt into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, they were both laughing and crying at the same time. Come spring, there will be 4 children running around this ranch, Catherine said. Your house is going to be very loud. Our house, and I cannot wait. They stood together on the porch watching the stars wheel overhead, feeling the future stretch before them bright with possibility. Chapter 15 Epilogue. The legacy continues. 6 months later, on a warm June day in 1889, Catherine gave birth to a healthy baby girl. They named her Sarah Elizabeth Blackwood, honoring both their mothers. The birth was difficult but successful, attended by a doctor from Helena, whom Cole had insisted on bringing in. When Cole held his daughter for the first time, he felt something break open inside him. The fear he had carried since Beth's death, the terror that childbirth meant death, finally began to ease. Catherine had survived. Their daughter was perfect. The legacy would continue. She has your eyes, Catherine said weakly from the bed, and your stubborn chin, Cole replied, making her laugh. Ben and Luke crowded into the room, eager to meet their new sister. Luke cooed over the baby with unrestrained delight. Ben was more reserved, but Cole saw the tenderness in his older son's eyes as he carefully touched the baby's tiny hand. Will you teach her to read like you taught us? Ben asked Catherine. Of course, and you and Luke can help. She will need good big brothers to look after her. Old Jack, who had been waiting anxiously outside, finally came in to meet his granddaughter. The old man's eyes were suspiciously bright as he held the infant. 4th generation Blackwood, he said hoarsely. I never thought I would live to see it. Your mama would be so proud, Cole. Over the following months, the ranch flourished. The railroad began construction on their right-of-way, paying their annual rent faithfully. Cole used the extra income to hire more hands, repair buildings, improve the stock. The ranch became more profitable than it had been in years. Catherine's school grew to 20 students meeting in a dedicated room Cole had built onto the house. Children came from neighboring ranches to learn, and Catherine taught them all with patient dedication. Tom Fletcher married a widow from town and brought her to live in a small house Cole built for them on the ranch property. Miguel Santos became foreman of the horse operation, breeding some of the finest animals in the territory. The ranch became a model of successful management. Marcus Harrington was tried and sentenced to 10 years in prison for conspiracy, bribery, and attempted murder. The evidence from his ledger was damning. Before he was led away, he looked at Cole one last time. I loved her, you know. Beth, I would have given her everything. I know, Cole said quietly, but she chose her life. She chose her sons. You need to let her rest. And Marcus was taken away to serve his sentence, finally releasing his grip on a past he could not change. One evening in late summer, Cole and Catherine sat on the porch watching the sun set while Sarah slept in a cradle beside them. Ben and Luke were down by the creek fishing with old Jack supervising from a chair on the bank. Do you ever regret it? Catherine asked. Marrying me instead of waiting to find love again? Cole pulled her close. I did find love again, just not in the way I expected. What we have is stronger than what I had with Beth because it was built on honesty and partnership from the start. I love you, Cole Blackwood, and I love you, Catherine Blackwood. Thank you for saving me, for saving all of us. Later that week, Cole took Ben out to the family cemetery where Beth and the twins were buried. They had not visited together in a long time, and Cole felt it was important. Do you still miss her? Ben asked, looking at his mother's headstone. Every day, but missing her does not mean I love Mama Cade any less. Both feelings exist together. Cole put his hand on his son's shoulder. Someday this ranch will be yours and Luke's, and then it will belong to your children. The legacy is not just land, Ben. It is family. It is taking care of each other. It is making hard choices to protect the people you love. Like you marrying Mama Kate to save the ranch. Exactly like that, though it turned into much more than I expected. Good, Ben said seriously, because I like Mama Kate. She makes you happy, and she makes good cookies. Cole laughed. Both very important qualities in a wife. They stood together in the quiet cemetery 3 generations of Blackwoods represented. The past, the present, and the future all connected by love and sacrifice and determination. As they walked back to the house, Cole saw Catherine on the porch with baby Sarah in her arms. Luke came running up from the creek, soaking wet and laughing. Old Jack followed more slowly, shaking his head at his grandson's antics, but smiling. This was legacy, Cole thought. Not just the land, or the buildings, or the cattle, but this. Family, love, the courage to start over when everything seems lost, the wisdom to accept help when pride says to refuse it, the grace to love again after loss. He had started this journey desperate and broken, proposing a loveless marriage to a desperate woman. And somehow, through trials and danger and honest partnership, they had built something worth far more than the land they fought to keep. They had built a family. Cole joined his wife on the porch, taking Sarah from her arms and cradling his daughter close. "What are you thinking about?" Catherine asked. "About how I proposed a marriage of convenience and ended up with a marriage of love. About how the best things in life come when you stop trying to control everything and just do what is necessary." "That is very philosophical for a cowboy. I have a smart wife. She teaches me things." Catherine leaned against him, and they watched the sun paint the Montana sky in shades of gold and crimson. Below them, the ranch spread out in all its hard-won beauty. Behind them, Old Jack was telling Luke another story from the old days. Beside them, Ben sat reading a book Catherine had given him. "Cole," Catherine said softly. "Yes, thank you for taking a chance on a desperate schoolteacher freezing under a tree, for trusting me with your sons and your ranch and your heart, for choosing me every day even when it would be easier not to. I should be thanking you. You saved more than the ranch, Catherine. You saved me." And as the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Cole Blackwood felt a peace he had not known in years. The legacy was secure, his family was whole, and the woman in his arms was his partner in every sense that mattered. They had started with necessity and built something that transcended audit. They had taken a practical arrangement and transformed it through honesty, courage, and commitment into genuine love. It was not the fairy tale romance of storybooks. It was better. It was real, earned, and enduring. And that Cole thought as he held his wife and daughter close was the greatest legacy of all, the end.